We got to hear from Denver Broncos head coach Sean Payton on his Monday conference call. And he shared some good updates on the passing game, tight end Greg Dulcich, his injury, the process of bringing him back, Jerry Jeudy, and Marvin Mims' utilization. We're going to dive deep and we're going to react to all that on today's brand new episode of Good Morning Broncos. Good morning, Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of Good Morning Broncos here on Mile High Sports YouTube page. Mile High Sports is every team, every day. Thank you so much for tuning in every single morning. Go pour yourself a cup of coffee as we get into some Broncos conversation here on this Tuesday morning. Now, the Broncos will be back on the practice field at the Centura Health Training Center on Wednesday in preparation for Sunday's game against the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love is coming to town, but look, that Green Bay Packers defense has a lot of aggressive playmakers, good guys against the run. You got pretty elite players on the back end of that secondary. Rasul Douglas is always a player to watch here. So Denver's going to have their work cut out for them, even though the Green Bay Packers are not at a point where they've expected this season. Similar position right now as the Denver Broncos. They have not met the expectations that they've had for themselves, but look, this is a great opportunity for Denver to try to get their second win of the season. Look, that's ultimately the goal. I know right now the conversation amongst Broncos country has a lot to do with tanking. Oh, they should just lose the rest of their games. But the reality of the situation is these guys, there are a lot of players in that locker room. There are a lot of coaches in that locker room who are fighting for their livelihoods, their ability to coach next year. They're trying to fight to keep their job in a lot of aspects here. So they're not just going to roll over. They're going to go out and they're going to compete regardless of, what the fan base wants them to do here. But Broncos country, I'm Cody Rourke, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports. And one thing we do here at MHS is we cover every single professional sports team in Colorado. Now, the Avalanche season is already in full swing, so stay tuned here on MHS's YouTube page for coverage from Arif Dean, our Avs beat reporter. The Nugget season's about to start up here in a couple of weeks with the banner raising ceremony and obviously the opener against the Los Angeles Lakers. Ryan Blackburn has you covered with the Pickaxe and Roll podcast here on Mile High Sports. We appreciate you all so much for rocking with us here. Well, let's dive into the conversation here on today's episode of the show. Pour yourself a cup of coffee. I know for me, I need it. Coffee is great, but obviously the Broncos off here on Tuesday morning. They don't have anything going on at the facility, nothing that we as media members get access to here. But one thing we do get every single week on Mondays, we always get to hear from Broncos head coach Sean Payton on a conference call. And so yesterday we were able to jump on one with him. And I think really just having the time from Thursday last week when Denver lost to the Kansas City Chiefs all the way till now, there's a lot of time to go back and watch the film, right? Because, after a game, we get to talk to coach at the podium. And, he hasn't had a chance to see the film yet, but he knows what happened. We all know the outcome of it. So I think there's always better clarity when you get to go back and watch the film, diagnose certain things, and then come back, every Monday, 24 hours after, or in this case, since Thursday, definitely not 24 hours in that case. But you have a good perspective on, okay, hey, here's where things went wrong. Here is what we as a coaching staff need to do better. Here's what we need to be on players about even further here. But he gave us a lot of great updates. He gave us a ton of great insight into some of the different dynamics of what's going on with this football team right now, sitting at a 1-5 record. Once again, we've said it. This is not where Broncos country has wanted to be. This is not the expectation they had for the team that they love to root for on Sundays. And certainly for the organization, this is not what they had expected coming into the season as well. So, you know what? The world is not going to feel sorry for them, though. Denver's going to have to go out there and they're going to find a way to compete. And we also got to hear from Javonte Williams. We won't hear from him here today on this show. But one thing he said yesterday that really kind of stood out to me is the team just has to find a way to piece things together in one sitting, right? Because there's days where, okay, if the offense is clicking, the defense is struggling. Or then what we've seen the last couple of weeks, the defense, for some reason, is playing a little bit better, but the offense is struggling to get going. He says, we just need to play a complete game, offense, defense, and special teams. And unfortunately, against Kansas City, Denver didn't do so well on the special team side of it, from the punting game or the kicking game, and also on offense. Defense played as best they could against the Kansas City Chiefs, as we talked about here. So Sean Payton, one of the things he talked about, one of the things he acknowledged in Monday's conference call with us, talking about, I think, tight end Greg Dulcich here. I think we got to break this down a little bit. Obviously, for Denver, where they're at, Dulcich suffered another hamstring injury. This is his fourth hamstring injury in just 2 seasons, and it's super unfortunate. And I think the one thing that Payton highlighted here is that there were some questions from people, and the question he was initially asked was, do you guys feel like you rushed him back too soon? Well, here's what he had to say about the process regarding Dulcich, his recovery, bringing him back, and where they currently stand with him right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, we went through the protocols, and really we felt like we were pretty patient, and you rely on the athlete, you rely on the medical team and the experts, and then you go through the recovery and the rehab, and you spend a lot of time really testing before you ever go out into game conditions. So, look, it's easy to look back on that and say, hey, was it too soon? But all the information we had and the information, the feedback, and I think, he felt confident. We regroup with him right now and get him quickly up to speed, recovered, and we go from there. But it's unfortunate because I know he's frustrated. It's been a reoccurring issue for him, specifically the hamstrings.
And look, that's how you go about. That's how injuries are managed in the NFL. You work with the medical team, you work with the player. It's a collaboration. Like, teams don't force players to come back before they're ready here. And look, I can tell you this by just watching Greg Dulcich over the handful of weeks that he was on injured reserve prior to being designated to return and activated from it last week. He was running, he was moving well. But a lot of it too, when they built up to it, at least the stuff that we were able to see as media members, when he was working on the side field, he's doing a lot of stretching. In the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks at that juncture there, doing a lot of stretching. He's doing a lot of light movement. And then you gradually build up into doing some explosive, some burst work there, full 100-yard sprints, doing those things. Like, we saw him do it. And he was doing really, really well. And they didn't look like they were rushing any part of his recovery. And look, Bo Lowry's very good at what he does. And talking to players, they really like the techniques that Bo uses. And obviously, if you don't know who Bo is, you don't know Bo. But the VP of Player Health and Performance, he's got these really good techniques that he uses. And look, Denver's got access to a lot of different things: cold tub, hot tub, massage treatment, active release therapy. I mean, they have so many different things that these players take advantage of. But you can't rush your healing, right? And so that's what the Broncos didn't do. They didn't rush Greg Dulcich back. It's just the unfortunate nature of what he's got to deal with. He's a fast, big, explosive player. And so you run into these issues with these guys who have that fast twitch muscle fiber in them, and you run into issues of soft tissue injuries like hamstrings, because I don't know what the science is behind it. I'm sure if you've ever pulled your hamstring, you know exactly how it feels like. It stinks. It sucks so bad, because you can make great progress, right? You can go through 4, 5, 6 weeks of recovery from a hamstring injury, feel great, and then just one sudden movement sets you all the way back to stage one. And so I think that's where the Broncos are at right now with Greg Dulcich. It's a little unfortunate considering, he's trying his hardest to be out there. He's so frustrated, as Payton had pointed out. It's just a bad situation. It kind of stinks because he's a very explosive and talented player, and Denver obviously misses his presence on the offensive side of the ball. When you look at what they got going on at the tight end position, they don't have any explosive players. Adam Troutman is a reliable pass catcher, but he's not explosive. He doesn't have speed. He's not a real legitimate threat against defenses in today's NFL. Chris Manhertz, big athletic body type, doesn't necessarily have explosive speed and only has 25 career catches through 8 years of play in the NFL. So Denver right now, I think that's what's making their offense a little one-dimensional. They're missing Dulcich and what he can do from his ability to play inline, as a wing, as a guy you can rotate motion underneath to the flat. I mean, vertically, that's why I think everyone's trying to take away Denver's, top receivers, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and we'll dive into a little bit more of Marvin Mims. So let's talk about that as well. Sean Payton was asked about, what does Marvin Mims have to do specifically in order to kind of get back, or to maybe take the next step or elevate a level further here in the offense, or just in general this season. Here's what Broncos head coach Sean Payton had to say.
Yeah, look, he's doing well. And I say that, we're faced with the challenge sometimes of trying to find that balance with Sutton, Jeudy, Mims, the guys that we feel like can make plays in space. But he's on track. We're confident in how he's handling the return duties, but also his ability to make plays for us in the passing game, and trying to find that balance. We've had packages where both he and Jeudy are on the field at the same time, opposite one another. Again, that's still a work in progress, but I don't think it's a work in progress specifically towards Marvin as much as it is for us finding packages and touches for him. both in the passing game, and also he's someone that can handle the speed sweeps, the arounds, those type of things. He's really good with the ball in his hands.
And look, I understand the challenge of trying to able to manage your personnel when you got guys like Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and look, there's a lot of talk right now. Well, maybe Denver's just auditioning these guys for trades, and it's very possible they could be doing that, right? But even if they are, you can still do that by featuring a guy like Marvin Mims. And the thing that I just don't understand, and it's been mind-boggling to me in a sense, is looking at where this Denver team is at with a 1-5 record. It's going to be hard to claw their way out. And look, they certainly can, but the schedule doesn't get any easier. And we're not going to give the benefit of the doubt right now because based on what we've seen, like Denver has yet to really put together a full, complete team performance in all phases, offense, defense, and special teams. But you look at what Marvin Mims can do. We've seen his impact on offense. We've seen his impact on special teams here. And I feel like if you're trying to showcase Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, what better way to do that than by featuring Marvin Mims as well, right? Because you know what Marvin is going to do? He's got the legitimate deep ball speed threat that really scares defensive coordinators. Say, hey, this guy cannot get behind our defense. And so they're going to allocate resources to try to take that away here, which does create more one-on-one opportunities for guys like Cortland, for guys like Jerry Jeudy. So to me, that's why I just don't understand why they can't utilize him here. So we'll see if they can find a way to do that here this week against the Green Bay Packers. Once again, we talked about it. That secondary that they have some really good players, Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas, and they're going to have their work cut out for them. But I think this is a great opportunity. Find a way to get Marvin Mims the football a little bit more because he's too explosive, too talented of a player to just get 12 snaps per game on offense and not get a single target. So for me, I would very much like to see that going forward. I imagine you would like to see that going forward as well here. But there, speaking of wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy, obviously the subject of a lot of trade rumors in the last 2 weeks. There's been a lot of drama with Jerry Jeudy regarding social media, obviously getting into spats with Mark Schlereth on Twitter, calling him an old head. And then you saw obviously the pregame stuff that happened with Steve Smith when Steve Smith tried to approach him and apologize for, something he said on his podcast. And, Jerry's response was, I don't mess with you. And you know what? And that's totally fine. Like Jerry doesn't have to accept that apology. And I think a lot of people were kind of misdirecting that. I just think it's like, you know what? Like, nah, sorry, man, I just don't rock with you. But, Steve Smith then went scorched earth on him once again. And it's just that fine line between professionalism as an analyst and also being a former player. It's like you got to find that balance here. And so obviously the Mark Schlereth thing, the Steve Smith thing have not painted Jerry Jeudy in a very good light in the eyes of many people in the fan base. A lot of the fan base have expressed to me that they want to get rid of him. And he's a talented player, but maybe Denver isn't the right environment for a guy like Jerry Jeudy, right? Maybe he's come in. He's been a winner throughout high school and throughout his college days at Alabama. Come to Denver and all you do is lose. That can take a toll on you, right? And that can affect your level of preparation here. But Jerry is too talented of an athlete, I think, to underperform the way that he is. 3 catches, 14 yards. And look, the byproduct of that is that the offensive line has struggled on the outside and pass protection. Like Russ doesn't have a clean, steady pocket all the time. And so when that's the case, and if Russ is getting hit as much as he has been, like as a quarterback, sometimes you don't necessarily want to stand in the pocket and deliver that. You're going to try to roll out and try to create opportunities and extend plays. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked with what Jerry Jeudy does really well. But here's what Broncos head coach Sean Payton had to say about Jeudy, where he's at in terms of production-wise, whether or not he's frustrated, and also touching on a little bit of the social media drama and his perspective on it.
He's frustrated, I'm sure. He's a talented player. We need to continue to look for ways to get him throws, not only in the slot, but outside. The other stuff, look, I don't try to keep track of, and as long as it's not a distraction to what we're doing as a team. But that being said, he's very competitive. He's smart, and so he's a playmaker for us, and we got to continue to look for ways to put him in positions to make plays.
I think that's it. As long as it's not serving as a distraction to the team, like, I think everybody on the outside can say, okay, on social media, this guy's, he's a distraction. Well, if it's not trickling into the locker room, because here's the thing, a lot of those players in the locker room support Jerry Jeudy. He's their guy, right? And it's different because obviously you have a fan base who's very loyal. They love Mark Schlereth, who's a Super Bowl champion with the Broncos, got history, obviously, with the team. And you look at Jerry, who hasn't performed to the expectations of being a first-round draft pick, and that's where sometimes you can alienate, the fan base can alienate their own player, and sometimes the player can do that to themselves by putting stuff out there that alienates the fan base toward him. And it's certainly understandable, but They're going to have to find ways to get the ball into his hands. And look, there's 2 weeks until the NFL trade deadline. If Denver's trying to feature him, I'm sure they're going to try to get him some more looks. But ultimately, we'll be very, very curious to see what Sean Payton decides to do going forward here with Jerry Jeudy. And another thing we are going to touch on here on today's episode of Good Morning Broncos, I think one thing we have to dive a little bit deeper into regarding the Broncos, regarding the offense, I think the passing game, we've seen the struggles, right? And look, Russell Wilson is a guy who's constantly been thrown under the bus a little bit. On Thursday night last week after the game, Sean Payton said something along the lines of, Russell, the passing, we have to pass better in order to win in this league. And it kind of seemed like an indication like, oh, he's throwing Russell Wilson under the bus there. Sean Payton took a chance to kind of clarify his comments. He dove a little bit deeper into his overall explanation on the passing game. Here's what he had to say.
Well, look, it's been a handful. It's hard to point to one specifically. You want to have confidence in the pocket. We need to find ways to get guys open. And typically speaking, that has to happen efficiently on early downs. It can't be just on third down. So that's one of the things that we've discussed here, early today and looking at our pass list and drive starters, and making sure that we find a way. Obviously, on first down, you're going to be mixed runner pass with your sequencing, but the feeling after that game was just simply, we've got to be able to throw it better to win in this league, and that wasn't directed at any one player. That was directed at all of us on offense.
And look, it's multifaceted when we talk about the passing game and how quarterbacks look successful. I think if we look at Week 6 in general, quarterbacks around the entire NFL, they looked rough, all of them, including Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott at times. Brock Purdy looked human for once. Jalen Hurts really struggled, 3 interceptions. Russ had 94, 95 total passing yards. But here's the thing. If you go back and you watch the tape, man, Denver's offensive tackles, whether you're talking about Garrett Bowles, whether you're talking about Mike McGlinchey, these guys struggle to maintain gap integrity to not prevent somebody from coming to the outside and having a free run at the quarterback. Russ at times had to escape some sacks that would have happened there, but then they just flustered the pocket. They set more pressure up the middle, and then they boated on the outside, which made it very difficult for Russ to stand in the pocket and be able to find guys. That's why they had to go, and obviously the injury to Dulcich, they had to go with more extra protection. They brought in number 75. You heard it on the broadcast. Number 75 has reported as eligible. Quinn Bailey was kind of that 13 personnel, right? Now, he was eligible in a sense, but he was never going to run a route. They had him in alongside Adam Troutman and also Chris Manhertz. And oftentimes we've seen Mike McGlinchey and we've had a tight end on his side. We've seen that, and it still hasn't worked. Like Chris Jones, George Karlaftis made it very, very difficult for him this past week, and that presents a whole bunch of other questions. But I think it's easy for everybody to pile on Russell Wilson, right? Russell Wilson's the one quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion, who is never allowed to have a bad game, right? Because then it just solidifies that he's washed. And I think it's such an unfair perspective by fans. I think it's an unfair perspective by national media members. Russell Wilson can only do so much, right? And we've seen when Russ has time to throw, he has a clean pocket. Like Russ is delivering. Russ is very good this season when that's the case. But the Jets kind of flustered that a little bit against Denver. And also you take a look at what the Kansas City Chiefs did. They took that option away from him. And so Denver's going to have to find a way to be more balanced overall on the offensive side of the ball. But Broncos country, thanks so much for rocking with me this morning here on Good Morning Broncos. Go pour yourself another cup of coffee. The Broncos will be back on the practice field tomorrow at the Centura Health Training Center. I'll be out there in Dove Valley covering it. We'll give you all the updates that you need here on Good Morning Broncos. We appreciate you so much for rocking with us. We'll see you tomorrow morning.